Some may find it ironic that there are over 3,000 children in Florida waiting to be adopted when gay and lesbian couples aren't being allowed to adopt. Others don't. The country's view on gay rights bear an eerie resemblance to another movement that began well over 40 years ago.
There's always been populations that have been discriminated against, and gays and lesbians, bisexuals, and transgender individuals are the ones that are fighting that battle now. I mean, it's just where the focus is, and it's kind of sad because it's always been like this. You know, it's only now that we're kind of getting the attention on the fact that there are all these laws that prevent equality for gays and lesbians.
People don't really want to talk about whether or not homosexuality is a choice. They don't want to talk about whether gay rights exist. And, you know, to me, one of the most important things that we can do is open that dialogue now while we're in college and start discussing these issues.
With 3,500 children in Florida's foster care system, some legislators are fighting harder than ever to lift the ban on GLBT adoptive parents.
House Bill 123 would allow judges to determine what is in the best interest of a child as far as granting an adoption petition. Currently in statute, homosexuals are banned from petitioning the court to adopt a child. However, in the state of Florida, we have lots of foster parents who happen to be homosexuals and have been providing wonderful homes to children.
Actually, at the hearing that we had in the Senate, there was not a single testimony that was opposed to gay marriage. Not a single one. We had about 15 to 20 that were there in support of gay adoption, but there was not a single testimony opposed to gay adoption. Essentially, the only argument they are using is that it's not the ideal situation, that children should have a mother and father figure.
One of the hardest parts of getting a ban like this lifted is trying to convince opposition that a gay household will not in any way harm the child. Most arguments claim that children should be raised by a mother and a father.
You don't see anybody outlawing single parents from adopting. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. And single parents have children all the time, and they're raised, you know, amazingly well. Some of my best friends were raised by single parents. Some of my best friends were raised by gay parents. There's no reason to ban gays from adopting. And, you know, last time I checked, this country was founded on equality.
I believe that people are influenced by their environment, and that if somebody grows up in a gay household, that they are more likely to end up, you know, engaging in activities that might make them considered to be gay just because that was the way that they were brought up.
The gay rights movement is being coined by political activists as the civil rights movement of the 21st century. A struggle that went on for many years, some might ask just how long this fight will last.
One of my favorite quotes is The Simpsons. There's this group of gay Republicans, and their motto is a gay president by 2058. And, you know, Lisa says something to him, and he's like, we're realistic, you know. I really think that it's going to take a while, but I really am encouraged by the fact that there is a dialogue opening up, and the people are starting to talk about this, not just on a national level and not just academically, but, you know, in classrooms and in between friends and, you know, at coffee shops and in hallways and out on the green. And in that sense, I think if we can keep that dialogue going and if we can start to better understand these kinds of things, that there's a possibility it could be much shorter term.
I think legal equality for the gay rights movement will come probably, you know, within the next 10, 20 years. We'll see legal equality, we'll see same-sex marriage, we'll see gay adoption, but there's still going to be that institutional inequality, the inequality of people who are going to be discriminatory and biased no matter what, and that takes, you know, hundreds of years to fade out of the system.
It's funny when you listen to arguments that aren't founded really in fact, that sometimes they just sound silly. I remember when I first ran for office, I was watching the debate of the Equal Rights Amendment back in the 70s. They had a historical flashback on TV, and, you know, people didn't want equal rights for women because, you know, they like to open the door for their wife. And so when you hear people say, bring up arguments like that, you kind of wonder, and they don't last through time. This issue, I'm sure, will change in Florida.
Only 3 states in the U.S. still have a total ban on gay adoption. Florida, Mississippi, and Utah. With the country's apparent move toward progression, Florida remains conservative in its views.
The ban was put on 30 years ago, and within those 30 years, up until this point, the ban has not been debated or discussed in the Capitol. So by filing the bills that we did last year and again this year, we feel very, very fortunate that at least the discussion is now taking place.
Florida's one of the only states that has a law as strong as it does saying that you cannot adopt. And it's a minority state in that view, and it appears to be very difficult to change that law in Florida.
Florida, politically, it's still a swing state. You know, it's like 52-48 with Republican and Democrat. But the House and the Senate are both overwhelmingly Republican. And that gives them the opportunity to be completely overwhelmingly conservative. Something like 70% of the House and like 80% of the Senate. It's really ridiculous. In my mind, we're one of the last, I'm not going to say oppressed here, but one of the last classes that it's legal to discriminate against. And they don't want to give that up. Because me standing on the Union Green holding my boyfriend's hand flies in the face of everything they stand for. So they do everything in their power to stop it, and because they have such overwhelming power, we end up with statutes like that.
Senator Nairn Rich expressed that this is a bill she is very passionate about. She is simply trying to correct a law that should not have passed in the first place. She states that gay foster parents are willing to take the hardest children to adopt. They often take sibling groups and children with diseases, children that, regardless of what, deserve a loving, stable, permanent home.
We looked at not repealing the ban on gay adoption, but we looked at a small portion of this, how this affects families and how this affects children. And so we simply took a small portion of what is going on in the state right now, which anybody would agree that there is tremendous hypocrisy when the state of Florida says and actually seeks out homosexual couples to be foster parents because of the number of children that are languishing in state care.
I mean, I'm not going to say that it's fair just because the world's not fair, but at the same time, if you have an opportunity to be adopted by, a gay family or to be adopted by a regular family with a mother and a father, I think that I would prefer that the child be placed with the mother or the father. But like I said, the world isn't fair, and I would much rather for that child to have a home than to not have a home.
The sponsors of the bill, Representative McIngvale and Senator Rich, will fight to have this agenda again next year. Senator Rich has been a very strong advocate. She's from South Broward, and she filed this in the Senate, was able to get a hearing even though the bill didn't pass in the committee, and I believe that she will push for it again next year.
The bill filed by Senator Rich and Representative Sherry McIngvale will more than likely not be seen again this session. But both legislators agree they will not rest until it is passed. In Tallahassee, I'm Tasha Adamson for FSU Spotlight.